Welcome everybody to the 40 Finance channel. Happy almost 2022. And as we head into the end of the year, I thought it'd be sort of fun to look back at a lot of the price targets that I put out there for some of the large and mega cap stocks and see how they trended since I made those actual price targets. Now, as far as my personal stock portfolio, it's looking like it's going to be a negative year, almost for sure. We got a couple trading days left as I'm recording this on 12/30 and 12/31. So I'm going to let the nickels and dimes roll through over these next 2 days, and then I'll kick off next year with a portfolio update perhaps. I can tell you as I was doing this and looking through, what went right and what went wrong over the year, and it's really no surprise, but, small cap, no EPS type stocks, speculative stocks, tech stocks with high valuations and limited EPS, those are the ones that got crushed, right? We'll see if they bounce back. Everything that I dipped my toe into that didn't have fundamental EPS support basically tanked, right, at the end of the day. And a lot of the stuff that did have those strong fundamentals, which I look at so closely on this channel, they turned out okay, and for the most part were relatively predictable. So let's jump into some of those price targets and see how they fared. All right, so just for clarity here, I went through my videos, recent uploads between the last 3 and 6 months. It kind of depended on what the stock was and how recently I did an update on them. And the videos where I actually took the time, and I put this example up here, the videos where I actually took the time to write out a price target with an explanation to it, that's what I'm chalking up here on the board today. Now, there's plenty of other videos on here where I'm doing, for example, Morningstar Fair Value evaluation and sharing opinions on that. But for this video, as far as tracking, we're looking for ones that sort of have this end piece here where I've actually written some numbers on the board. Okay, here's a spreadsheet I made up to go back and track some of these videos. You got the stock, the posting date of the video, the current price, which was the price at the time of the video, my target price, my target date, and then on most of them, I had a target forward EPS and I had a target forward PE. And without checking on the math, if you went through these and you multiplied 59 times 73, for example, you should land somewhere in here. Kicking things off with Amazon, you see here I had 2 Amazons relatively close to each other, August 2nd, October 29th. And the reason that this was a big update is because if you remember Amazon's earnings call back in October, they talked about actually how much capital expenditure they were in the midst of and how much more they were planning to do dramatically affected the outlook for Amazon stock on a fundamental level. And you can really see those changes because in August, early August, the current price was $3,300 and I had a target price of $43.07. That was based on a forward EPS of 73 for the 2022 fiscal year. And I had a target, a forward PE of 59. Talk a lot about the concept of forward price to earnings and when we start to reach the end of the year, how that kind of flips over a little bit. And most people are using 2022 fiscal years for their forward PEs right now. And certainly by January of 2022, everybody is going to be using that metric, at least for the first quarter or 2 of the year. Now, in Amazon's case, I did the update around Halloween. Current price hadn't changed that much, but I did lower my target, short-term target, to 3,700 or so, something like that. And here's the big reason why. You have this forward EPS consensus coming down from 73 to 65, and that's not actually a consensus. I usually massage that number slightly. It's built off of a consensus at the core, but then I kind of look at the information I have and make my own choice. So you lost $8 per share, and then I have the forward PE right about normal here, 59 in, let's see, August, and then 58 around Halloween. And this still feels like a pretty good price to me. All right, quick peek at Amazon right now on SeekingAlpha. You have December 2022. The current consensus is $53 or so for the EPS estimate. On today's price, that puts your forward PE at 64. So when we go back to my information, you know, even this number looks like it's a little bit at risk. If this target forward EPS drops to 53, that would change a lot of things. I'm not going to change mine because I'll be interested to see when Amazon talks about the fourth quarter in January. I'm sort of expecting things to look a little bit better than they have in their last earnings report. All right, Facebook. That was posted in August. The price at the time was $364. I put $391 for January of 2022, sometime in and around their earnings call. I had EPS of 17 for the 2022 fiscal year and a forward PE of only 23. That's interesting. So let's see where Facebook sits. Got the EPS of 14, so that's actually lower than what I put in. And you have forward PE of 23.80 on today's price of 345. So my opinion here is, you know, I'm kind of nailing the target forward PE right now, but if they don't get these EPS projections up, then this 391 is probably going to be at risk. We'll have to see how it goes. I think Facebook's a strong candidate to outperform on earnings per share, but I don't know if they can do it by $2. We'll have to see. All right, Google, August 7th. Price at that time was $27.49. I projected $33.60. January of 2022. You see the theme with the earnings report. So while we're at the end of the year, right, for a lot of these companies, you know, January 31 doesn't mean a ton from a stock market perspective because the earnings for the period that closes then, those don't come out for another 3 or 4 weeks. So that's why you see a lot of January 2022s on there. Now in Google's case, I put $120 on the forward EPS, 29 on the target forward price to earnings. Let's take a look at where we're at today. Price is $29.35. That forward EPS for 2022 looks like it's come down. You're at 114, at least on a consensus level. And today's forward PE is sitting at about 25. Now, Google has done very well to outperform their EPS over the past, you know, let's just call it 18 months, 24 months. So can they get to 120? We'll have to see. But if their performance carries on like it has been, then I don't think that's a problem. And I think this 3360 still has a chance. All right, Microsoft. This was on September 5th. It was a combo video with Microsoft and Apple. Price at that time for Microsoft was $301. My target price was a little shy of that, actually, $296. This is for January. I had an EPS for 2022 at $9.25 and forward PE of 32. Looking at Microsoft today, seems unlikely, perhaps, that it would drop $40, and let's see what's changed. So they are in an interesting situation because of the way they report their calendar year. Their fiscal year ends on June of 2022, so halfway through the year. Now, at this time, I will say in January, we're probably going to be looking ahead to 2023 with Microsoft, but you got somewhere in the neighborhood of 922 and 1054 for the actual EPS that people are going to be using. And then the PE, at least from 2023 standards, drops down to 32 on today's price. Going back to my world, I'm definitely light on EPS if you're going to be talking about that, using 2023's fiscal year, which starts roughly July 1st. But the target forward PE is right about where I expected it to land. So for Microsoft, what I would say here as like a more comfortable level is probably this needs to be more like $10.25, $10.50. And let's just pretend it's $10 and you divide and you multiply that by 32. Microsoft, that would put them at $3.20. I still see it as slightly overvalued for the short term. Obviously, this is a company, hopefully, that you're buying for 5 years, 10 years, whatever. But in the very, very short term, it wouldn't surprise me if Microsoft's stock price actually comes down just a little bit from where it is today. Apple, which is from the same video, the price on September 5th, 154. I put 150 with forward EPS of $6 and a forward PE of 25. Looking at Apple today, you got about $180. EPS estimate, 571. This is for a fiscal period that ends in September, so I think we can still comfortably use that. It's actually lower than my EPS estimate, but there's still some quarters for that to change. Forward PE sits at 31. So when you look at the discrepancy, I have 150. Apple is whatever, $180. My forward PE projection is much lower. So you would actually shave 6 points or so off the multiple. So if you took their multiple, and let's just say we round it down for fun to 30, if you had $6 times 30, you'd be at 180, which is about where we're at today. So we'll see. I would say right now Apple's running hot. Same thing as Microsoft. You're buying it for 5 years, 10 years. Who cares? But for just for fun or entertainment value here, I see Apple as a stock that could potentially regress a little bit heading into the first part of 2022. All right, Nvidia, August 25th. The price at that time was $221. I say $220. Had a target EPS of $4.80 and a forward PE of 46. All right, looking at Nvidia, this is $100 over my projected price, so that's going to be interesting heading into February. There's no guarantee that this keeps going up or down, so it'll be interesting to see exactly where it lands. For this one, you've got another slightly odd earnings calendar where their fiscal year that mostly ran in 2021 will end actually on January of 2022. And so right now, most people who are speculating like me on price targets, they're going to be using this 2023 number. Right now at 516, and let's see what the forward PE is, 58.18. Going back here to my picks, I'm off on both accounts. As it stands today, it looks like this number could be a little light. We'll see if it changed. Right now, it's about 26 cents off of the consensus. And then obviously PE is flying high. I put it at 46 with my estimate coming into February. However, right now it stands at 58. So people are paying a lot more for Nvidia. And in order for this to course correct, I think it's probably unlikely that the forward EPS would change a whole lot. It could, even if it went up to, let's just say $5. Let's just start there because it's easy math. If we got $5 for EPS, $5 for forward PE, or excuse me, 50 for a forward PE, that would be a $250 stock. The way things are looking right now, that's probably more sensible than my target price of $220, somewhere in the neighborhood of $250. If I redid the math and spent the actual time on it, that's probably where I would land. So I could see some air coming out of Nvidia in the short term. All right, Alibaba on August 5th, the price was $200. I said $276, but not until May of 2022. Okay, so that one's a little further dated than some of these others. Got an EPS of 12, forward PE of 23. Let's see where we stand. Price today is 121. Obviously, Alibaba's gotten a significant hit. And you can see here that their fiscal year actually ends after everyone else's Q1. So they will start making money for the 2023 fiscal year on April 1st or so. With that in mind, we're going to use this projection from a forward standpoint. So you got 977 on that EPS. Today's forward PE is historically low, under 12 right now. Going back to my world, a little bit of weakness. I projected 12, it's like 1147, but this is the big thing here, and we'll have to see if it happens, and that is the price to earnings that investors are willing to pay. 11 or 12 for a company like Alibaba obviously is nuts and potentially the deal of the century if you can handle the uncertainty that's going on right now. Obviously, with my forward PE, I'm calling for a double of the valuation, right? So right now, if you're at $120, I'm calling for at least a double of that. That would get you up to $240. Now, unlike some of my other picks, this one's dated May 2022 when I did the initial research, waiting for their fiscal year to close. So still think you got a chance on this one. I will certainly say that the upside potential for Alibaba from a fundamental valuation is 100% there. They just need some headlines going in their favor. All right, next up is Netflix. Current price of $492. My target was $562. Another January one. EPS of $12.50. Forward PE of 45. Netflix today, $617. December of 2022, or excuse me, their fiscal year's ending on 2021 in December, so we're going to be using this number. The EPS estimate is now higher since when I posted. It's at 13.18 on a consensus level, and that puts your forward PE at 46.34. So the big difference here is actually the EPS level, at least as it stands right now. I pretty much nailed the valuation metric or the multiple that people are willing to pay, but this number has since went up, and that would obviously drag you into the 600s. We'll see how it shakes out. Either way, if you remember, back in summer, I was talking about how Netflix, gee whiz, I think it was $475 when I bought it in my mother's retail stock account, just a few shares, like 3 shares. And that thing went all the way past 600, so I was very happy for her. Wish I could have done the same for my own account where I was worried about, speculating on assets that didn't have that much EPS. I should have stuck to what I knew. All right, Disney. I haven't done a Disney video in a while, but this is interesting because this is May 20th, so a long time ago. Current price was $171. I speculated $150. That, though, was in August of 2021. That's when the target date was. Disney's Q1 starts and everyone else's Q4. So they've closed their 2021 a while back. Had an EPS of 3 and forward PE of 50. And looking at Disney today, we're pretty much living in the forward projections that I put on the board for last August. And there's been some change. So we are in this fiscal year because it does not end, nor will it get reported on until October. And for forward-looking statements, we're still kind of operating in the September 2022 mode. EPS consensus right now is at 409, so it's come up a little bit, but the forward PE has come down substantially. So interestingly enough, in my world, our prices are pretty close to each other, but what we saw here is the valuation multiple that investors were willing to pay has dropped considerably. It's down to 37, 38, well, whatever was on the last page, but the earnings are up almost $1. So if the earnings consensus is $4 now, and it ever hits the valuation that I projected, which was 50, then you're starting to get closer to a $200 stock. This could be a decent time to buy into Disney for the long term, right? 5-10 years, something like that. Particularly, I would say, if you saw it go under 150 on a correction event or some kind, I would say it stands out to me as a solid opportunity. All right, guys, couple more here. You can leave me a comment if you want me to finish the list on like a part 2 or something. But Visa, obviously one of my core holdings. Last time I did a Visa price update of note was July 26th. So again, a video where I actually put some numbers at the end of the video. I've had a handful of Visa updates since then, particularly when the stock was melting down. But let's use this July 26th because this is one I got wrong for sure. Current price at that time was $248. I put $263 with the target being October 2021. So very similar to Disney in the sense that Visa's fiscal year ends in September, the end of September, and then October, November, December kick off their fiscal year basically for 2022, right? I had EPS at 775 for 2022 and target forward PE, that's a pretty big range. I put a range of 29 to 39. Let's see what actually happened. All right, so for today, you're about 218. As most of you know, Visa took a hit on the chin along with the rest of the fintech stocks here recently. And if we look to, it's basically going to be this year, right? Because you still have 3 quarters plus left in this year, the way Visa's set it up. EPS consensus is 704, and your forward PE is, call it 31 on today's price. So back in my world, EPS consensus has dropped. Doesn't mean it couldn't go back up, and I feel pretty good about my 775 estimate there. But 29 to 39, we ended up on the low end of my scale, absolutely for sure. And frankly, if I was going to redo this, I would probably say from a market perspective, this 218 is right about fully valued in terms of fundamentals, right? We could bring this down to 7 for easy math and just do 7 times 30 gives you 210. I think Visa does start to surprise more in 2022, but if you're talking about short-term 30 days, 218 I don't think is a bargain. I think it's about fully valued. Look for another stock market meltdown to add more. And we'll close with my top holding in my stock market account, PayPal. Surprisingly to me, it's been a while since I did an actual write it down PayPal video. Definitely behind the curve on that. At that time, PayPal was $257. I put a target price of $302 for October of 2021, so that deadline is obviously passed. And looking ahead, I have next year's forward EPS at 775 and a forward PE of 39. All right, PayPal, like Visa and the rest of fintechs, got absolutely crushed here in the November-December timeframe. And let's see where we land. So this year's closing, I don't really care about that. My numbers were working off of this 2022 fiscal year. EPS of 530 and a PE of 35, call it 36. So you see what's happened with PayPal. It's very, very obvious. The EPS, which is the core fundamental play on how to evaluate the stock, has dropped substantially. $2.70, something like that. So that's a huge hit, and it's very similar to what we saw up here with Amazon, though for entirely different reasons. Okay, so PayPal now down to an estimate of about $5 a share in 2022. I had the forward PE at 39. And today it sits at 35. So if I was going to redo this on the fly today, what I would probably say to you guys is they'll probably outperform this, in my personal opinion. 530, let's put it at 550. And then on the forward PE, I'd go up to about a 39. And if I type all that in my calculator, it comes out to about 214. 214 here in the short term. So 192, there's still, some play in there with PayPal. I've been buying it on days that it sinks into the 180s, okay? And hopefully sometime in the beginning of 2022, I'll have my 100 shares of PayPal. I'm not sure if I'm going to get there on Visa because it's spraying up so quickly, but I still think there's some juice in PayPal. You may just have to wait all the way through the time that they release their holiday earnings report to start to see the positive headlines, because right now the headlines are very negative. And they're negative sentiment. They're not negative on the company and the stuff that it's going. It's just like everybody's like, PayPal, they can't really make money, and buy now, pay later is taking over, blah, 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 blah. Did a video on that the other day, but I didn't include a price target. So I think there's opportunity with PayPal. Just choose wisely and make sure you're managing your cost basis. All right, there's plenty more on this board, but I'm not going to cover them here in this video just for time reasons. But in 2022, I'm going to have a version like this available, probably some sort of like low-end single-digit like membership kind of thing that might be tacked on in this channel. I'm still kind of thinking about it. Let me know if you're interested in these spreadsheets. Obviously, they're just, my opinion, simple math, the way I look at stuff. But if that's something that interests you, let me know, because I'm considering building it out and keeping it more updated. Like, for example, this PayPal, a posting date of May 8th, that's a long time ago. So I need to do a better job of updating these price targets as you see news change, right? And EPS estimates change. Now, I would say overall, I'm pretty happy with where the price targets fell. And I think that there's a very clear rationale, the way I set that up, there's a very clear rationale on why something did or did not occur. I'd say on the worst case scenario, if you watch my price target videos, then, the majority of them were pretty close to spot on. You had the FinTech meltdown was probably the killer with Visa and PayPal. So have to do better on those projections going forward. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this. Please like, share with your friends, subscribe to the channel, all the things. We'll see you on the next video.